Welcome back. Josh Taylor, joined by Chris Mueller. This is the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, powered by FanDuel Sportsbook. Taking your phone calls, 412-575-2600 on the Borders and Borders hotline. Chris, I want to hit Twitter first because, first of all, you're getting a handful of praise from a couple different people for the choice of the Bernie Kosar t-shirt. A couple people like that one. Also got a question from Sean. He says, with the statement of Jim Rutherford, changes are coming. He says, so far the ones that have happened weren't what he predicted, but as far as what you're expecting, especially in this next couple weeks coming up after this Kasperi-Kapanen trade, him coming back to Pittsburgh, what are you expecting from Jim Rutherford?
Well, I think he's going to trade one of his two goalies, and I would just flat out say he's going to trade Matt Murray, but the guy's been pretty unpredictable. I think trading Murray is a must. It's not even trade one of your goalies. It's trade Matt Murray. If you get maybe a second or third round pick, just call it a draw and say, okay, we're going to do that and we'll move on. I think that's the best you can do there. I'm really confused, though, as to what else he can do. Like he said, changes are coming. They fired every assistant coach. Okay, they get Kapanen, so they have a defined top six in terms of their forwards. That third line is a gaping hole on the roster. I mean, we know what Jack Johnson in that situation is. I don't know if they can dig out from under that. I have a progressively worse and worse feeling by the day that Jack Johnson ends up starting next season on this roster and still playing third pair minutes. I want to know what happens to the third line. Patrick Hornquist's contract is kind of dicey, kind of iffy. Bjugstad has never proven able to stay healthy and productive when he is healthy. And Jared McCann's kind of a cipher at this point. He was really promising, and now he's not. So I think he needs to reshape that third line. He needs to make some depth moves there. And this is where you'd love to have a Dominic Cahoon, for example. Or maybe even still have Evan Rodriguez. Or maybe not have a GM that looks like he's an Old West gunfighter, like in the end of Unforgiven, except every bullet is a trade, and he's just out there, hitting the hammer, let's go, and he's trying to do whatever he can. Because that's my problem with Jim Rutherford right now. I think the guy is just throwing darts everywhere, trying to hit bullseye, and he's not doing it very often.
For a man who loves movie references, I got to scratch out Unforgiven now on my bingo card. That was a pretty good analogy. Let's jump to the phone lines. We got Jared and Knock. Jared, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
How you doing, guys?
Good, how are you?
Good. Hey, what do you think is going to be the best, offense or defense for the Steelers if they do have football this year?
Good question, Jared. And Chris and I talked about this earlier. I know one of Chris's concerns is the defense. I actually tend to lean toward the defense still being good, and I'll agree with Chris as far as not being able to force as many turnovers, but I like the depth on the defense. I really like the secondary. I know Keith Butler's really excited about the depth on the defensive line. I think a healthy Stephon Tuitt makes it look a lot better. So injuries barring, or I should say barring injuries, anything coming into play there, I do like the defense to be, if not better, the more consistent unit. Chris, what do you got for that?
I think it's going to be the defense, and I think it kind of has to be. This franchise, like it or not, when they've won Super Bowls, even in the Roethlisberger era, has done so on the strength primarily of a dominant defense. In fact, people don't like this, but go back and look at Roethlisberger's regular season stats in 2008. They won the Super Bowl. He was a mediocre quarterback that year. It's just a fact. Now, he had a legendary drive in Super Bowl 43 to win it for them, but he wasn't that good. I think the defense, by necessity, has to be the better of the two units. The key for the offense is make sure you're sustaining drives, keeping the defense off the field, and I think also getting a breakout from one of your players not named James Conner or Juju Smith-Schuster. I don't think either one of those guys is in their plans for next year, for beyond this season. I want Deontay Johnson to step forward and become a star in year two, or at least take major steps to becoming becoming that kind of player. Because if you think their offense is just going to be better because Roethlisberger's back, it will be compared to last year. Le'Veon Bell's not walking through that door. Antonio Brown's not walking through that door. What happens at the skill positions when the two guys that have defined them for most of the last decade aren't there?
Let me amplify this a little bit. I'm going to agree with you, and I'll say this too. The 2 seasons when Ben Roethlisberger won Super Bowls, the team had 3 things specifically. 1, they had a really dominant defense, like you pointed out. 2, they had balance with that offense. They were able to do what they needed to do, whether it was run or throw in certain situations. And he also had dependable guys that he could play with. And they weren't necessarily big-name guys, but they were at least dependable and able to make plays when the situation called for it. Let's go to Alex in Mount Lebanon. Alex, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hi, how are you doing tonight?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good. Do you think that because Ben Roethlisberger's injury led to him throwing all those interceptions against the Raiders in 2006?
Chris, what do you think about that?
I am not going to cite any kind of injury that Ben Roethlisberger suffered as being the cause of interceptions in 2006. I also will actually take this somewhat seriously as far as applying it to 2020 and say, I still don't think that the guy is going to, with his arm being fully whole again, I still think you can expect some picks because the interceptions that he throws, in my mind, come from the mentality that he wants to try to make plays down the field. And super healthy arm or not, I don't think that changes a whole lot. Hopefully it knocks a couple off from his 2018 total, but I don't think he just becomes one of the league's safest quarterbacks as a result.
To your point, it makes me a little bit nervous. The thought of this team having to rely on Ben Roethlisberger throwing 45 to 50 times a game.
They can't win like that, Josh. They
exactly.
can't.
I totally agree.
They can't.
It
The other
scares me.
story of this season is Ben Roethlisberger might feel like he needs or wants to play a little hero ball because he doesn't trust the backfield. Because when Le'Veon Bell was in his prime, he did trust Bell and he deferred to Bell. They cannot win with him throwing 40-plus passes on a regular basis. You can go look up the stats. Pro Football Reference is wonderful. You can look at the splits. When he's throwing the ball all over the lot, they're usually not winning.
Let's stick with the Steelers theme here and go to our tweet of the night, brought to you by Tri-State Office Furniture, and we'll take a look at it. This is one that was pretty, important to me personally. It's from Donnie Shell, soon to be inducted Steelers Hall of Fame safety. Today was his birthday. He says, thank you to everyone for the birthday wishes. I truly appreciate it. Chris, you talked about Bernie Kosar earlier in the show. If I want to talk about players I identify with early in my lifetime, Donnie Shell was my first favorite Steeler growing up. So a very happy birthday to Steeler great and soon-to-be Hall of Famer Donnie Shell. We will take a break. We'll come back. We'll wrap up when we come back. Stick around.